Donald Trump is no stranger to insane merchandise. There's so many interesting, odd, and downright batshit insane pieces of junk that you could probably fill the worst museum you've ever seen. There's the standard Trump hat, Trump sweater, Trump keychain, Trump coffee. There were Trump steaks, Trump sneakers, Trump airplanes, Trump coins, Trump teddy bears, Trump coloring books, Trump watches. There was a Trump university, a Trump fish that you hang on your wall and talks like Donald Trump, a Trump Funko Pop, and now we even have an official Donald Trump meme coin, meaning that we might have our first pump and dump president, God help us. But there's one Donald Trump themed product that's always interested me more than the rest, and that is Trump the Game. It's not whether you win or lose, but whether you win. And I was finally able to get my hands on my holy grail of dumb shit that I want to make a video about. So let's take a look at Trump the Game and see if it's a hidden classic that we all should be raving about, or if it's the crock of shit that it most likely is. But first, what's up? My name is Connor McDowell, and I'm currently campaigning to be People Magazine's sexiest man alive for the year 2025. If you like this video, or you think I should be nominated, just click subscribe. One subscribe is all it takes to get me on the cover of People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive issue. If I can prove myself to be sexier than Donald Trump's big, fat, voluptuous ass, then I think I deserve to be on the cover of People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive. Also, for some pretty cool and sexy movie reviews, you can follow me on Letterboxd, and if you haven't deleted it already, even though it is a vile hellscape right now, you can follow me on Twitter. Alright, now let's talk about Trump the Game. Originally published by Milton Bradley in 1989, Trump the Game is a Monopoly-style board game where all you have to do to win is have the most money at the end. According to a New York Times article from 1989, Mr. Trump said he had offers from 4 toy companies that wanted to add a game to Trump Tower, Trump Park, Trump Plaza, Trump Princess, Trump Castle, and Mr. Trump's other prized possessions. He said he chose the Milton Bradley Company because they're the Rolls-Royce of game companies. And he said that, like real deal making, Trump the Game puts a premium on skill and business instincts. I didn't want a game solely based on chance, Mr. Trump said. I wanted a game based on talent, and I wanted to teach people if they have business instincts. It's great if they can learn from a game instead of having to go out and lose your shirt. Trump the Game is so much fun. Mr. Trump said that he could see himself sitting in his triplex apartment atop Trump Tower playing Trump the Game. Clearly a trumped up excuse for relaxing. But this year would not end up being the incredible year I'm sure Donald Trump assumed he was gonna have. In 1989, Donald Trump released the infamously racist op-ed about the Central Park Five, where he demanded the state execution of 5 black and Hispanic children, despite their innocence. Also in 1989, Trump's then-wife Ivana started the divorce process after finding out he was having an affair with a supermodel, Marla Maples. But more relevant to this video, in 1989, Trump the Game became an utter failure, only selling 800,000 copies compared to the 2 million in sales that was projected. After its continued failure through 1990, Trump the Game was pulled from shelves until 2004, when the game was re-released by Parker Brothers with a shiny new Apprentice-themed rebrand. Trump even claimed that the profits from the original Trump the Game were donated to charity, but according to a 2016 investigation by the Huffington Post, there's no evidence that that ever happened. I'm acting as an agent of charities, Donald Trump boasted to a gaggle of reporters watching him unveil his newest venture, a board game, in February 1989. From the Trump perspective, all the profits we make will go towards charity, Trump said, rolling gold-plated dice across the pink marble atrium floor of Trump Tower. The Milton Bradley executives were shocked. During more than a year of planning, Trump had never mentioned giving the proceeds from Trump the Game to charity. I hope the game makes many millions of dollars, Trump told reporters, adding that the real beneficiaries would be groups that funded research into AIDS, cerebral palsy care, and multiple sclerosis. By August of 1990, about 18 months after the game was unveiled, Trump said it had sold more than 800,000 copies. His donations to charity from the game, Trump said, had been around $1 million. On store shelves, however, the game was a disappointment. Milton Bradley had planned to produce 2 million copies, but slow sales forced a reconsideration. Still, 800,000 games at $25 each is about 20 million in sales. So where did Trump's proceeds go? The Huffington Post on Friday put this question to Trump's lawyers, to an executive president at the Trump Organization, and to his presidential campaign spokeswoman. No one responded. HuffPost also contacted Hasbro, the parent company of Milton Bradley, attempting to confirm Trump's claim of 800,000 games sold. There was no immediate response. On its face, Trump's pledging involving Trump the Game bears a strong resemblance to Crippled America and to Trump Vodka. In each case, Trump promised large sums of money to charity as part of a pitch to sell a product. While it's impossible to calculate how much Trump's promises influenced the people who eventually bought Trump-licensed goods, press coverage of his promises made Trump look like a selfless millionaire only interested in helping good causes. So all of this begs the question, how did I obtain this rare collectible item? You see, my grandmother loved Bill Clinton. She always told me he was the greatest president ever because he balanced the budget. She even had a framed photo of Bill Clinton on her nightstand and would yell at me anytime I would question it. If anyone said a single thing that was negative about Bill Clinton, she would say, "He's a good man, he balanced the budget." Now, as a child, I obviously had no idea what this meant, but it didn't matter, because no matter what, Bill Clinton balanced the budget. So when Hillary Clinton announced that she was going to be running for president in 2016, my grandmother knew exactly who she was going to be voting for. Except there was one problem. There just so happened to be one man that my grandmother loved even more than Bill Clinton, and his name is Donald J. Trump. My grandmother always loved Donald Trump. She used to tell me how she went to his hotels hoping he'd be there, and she even swears that one time he looked directly at her and pointed. She flipped on a dime. She went from loving Bill and his wife to calling her Crooked Hillary and hoping that he would drain the swamp. I was living with her at this point in my life, and anytime he would come on the TV, whether he was giving a speech or just walking off the airplane, my grandmother would run to the only TV she owned just to see him. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2016 before she got the chance to cast her vote for the now two-time president and her celebrity obsession, Donald Trump. My grandmother was my first introduction to how the cult of personality around Donald Trump actually worked. Because of course my grandmother would love Donald Trump. He spent his entire career building a reputation surrounding his success and how much money he had. So if these are the things that you care about or desire, you're probably gonna find everything you've ever wanted through this man. This beacon of money and fame that had his name plastered on the side of hotels and casinos. So if that's what success looks like to you, Donald Trump is a god, and gods can do no wrong. My grandmother didn't have much Donald Trump merchandise, but she bought something when she lived down in Florida. Something that sat in a dusty corner of her apartment, untouched and unplayed by anyone. Something that, frankly, I was too scared to touch.
Everything's set for tonight, Mr. Trump.
I wonder what Trump's game is this time.
Trump's got a new game. Trump's got a new deal.
What's your game, Donald?
Trump has a new game. What is it?
Is it an airline? A new convention center? Mr. Trump. Is it a convention center? Game? Mr. Trump, please.
My new game is Trump, the game.
Trump, the game where you deal for everything you've ever wanted to own. Because it's not whether you win or lose, it's whether you win.
Yes!
Play Trump, the game from Milton Bradley.
I think you'll like it.
Mr. Trump's proceeds from Trump, the game will be donated to charity.
For some reason, when my grandmother passed away, my mom never got rid of Trump the Game. I think it's probably because she wanted to sell it, but we never knew if all of the pieces were there and we just didn't bother to check. So once Donald Trump got elected a second time, I knew this would be the perfect opportunity for me to make a video about it. So that leaves the question, how the fuck do you play Trump the Game? The version that I have is the 1989 Milton Bradley release, and as you can tell, it really is the Rolls-Royce of board games. I can't speak to the 2004 revised version of the game that's themed after The Apprentice, but I can't imagine it's much different. The instructions for this game are so unbelievably confusing, convoluted, and downright fucking stupid that it took 3 of us 45 minutes to figure out how the fuck we were supposed to play this game. So I'm gonna try and do my best to explain the rules better than the game does. Just to limit how confusing it might get, because Jesus Christ, it gets unbelievably confusing. The box is pretty beat up with tears on the corners and faded golden Trump letters. The back of the box says, "Now you can share in the excitement of high-stakes deal making. Just remember, play to win or don't play at all. Trump the game!" Your pulse is racing, your adrenaline is pumping, you're on the brink of a multi-million-dollar deal. Get ready to share in the high-stakes, risk-taking world of Donald Trump. Take charge. Bid against opponents for the hottest properties. Buy a classy casino for a mere $80 million. Then watch the profits pour in. Maybe a $200 million hotel is more to your liking. Or how about your own airline? Just don't pay too much for a property. You could lose your shirt. The real deal making begins after all the properties are purchased. Just about anything in the game can be bought or sold. If you're clever and quick, you can earn millions, even billions of dollars. When all the dealing is done, count up your cash. The player with the most money wins. Inside the extremely beat up box, we have the game board, a money tray with the sticker displaying Trump the game but applied in the wrong spot, 3 different denominations of Trump $1 million bills, 10 million, 50 million, and 100 million, 4 different Trump T-shaped pawns, 1 die displaying numbers 1 through 5, but instead of 6, it's a T for Trump, 8 property boxes that display different properties on the front, each matching up with 8 different properties on the game board. The properties are the sports center, the casino, the office building, the airline, the convention center, the hotel, the cruise line, and probably the craziest one, the tropical island, which I'm sure has nothing to do with a colleague and close personal friend of Donald Trump who would take him on trips to his private island. You know, I can't remember the guy's name right now, but I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with that at all. Also included are 72 Trump cards that have 10 different faces, but all include Donald Trump's picture on the back of them. The same picture, might I add, that is used throughout the game. I guess they just really liked this one picture and didn't want to use any other pictures. And finally, 2 separate instruction manuals. One with the full rule set that is 10 pages long, 11 if you include the cover, which you usually don't, but the people that made this game absolutely counted the cover because that page says page 11. There's also 1 double-sided piece of cardstock in case you just need a mild refresher on how to play. The front of the rulebook says, "Live the fantasy, feel the power, make the deals." And there's even a note from Donald Trump himself in the booklet that starts the same way. Now that you're about to play my game, I invite you to live the fantasy, feel the power, and make the deals. The object of the game is to make the most money. I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars. If you're clever, aggressive, and lucky, you could end up with $1 billion or more. Start by bidding against opponents for 8 different properties on the board. Play it smart and stack up huge profits. Pay too much and you could lose your shirt. How many fucking times is he gonna say the phrase lose your shirt? I feel like I'm going insane. When all the properties have been purchased, the deal making starts. Here's where shrewdness really pays off. Just about anything in the game can be bought, sold, or traded. Millions of dollars can be won or lost in seconds. When the dealing's done, count up your cash. The player with the most money wins. Now, read the rules, have fun, and remember, it's not whether you win or lose, but whether you win. Donald J. Trump. Now, this doesn't really explain how to actually play Trump the game. So let me just summarize this insanely long rulebook. Fucking 10 pages? Are you kidding me? The game is split into 2 parts. Part 1, the buying phase, where you make your way around the board, and Part 2, the dealing phase, where you literally just stop using the game board and pieces and only use the cards that you are currently holding in your hand. But let's take a look at Part 1 first. The game starts with each one of the 3 to 4 players that the game allows to roll the die, and whoever rolls the highest starts first. T for Trump being the highest number you can roll. At the start of every turn, the player grabs a trump card from the trump card pile. If you don't grab a trump card, then the player gets a punishment. The punishment being, take the trump card they would have picked up and place it in the discard pile. Once a card is in the discard pile, it cannot be played again in this game. Now, if you ask me, this is less so a punishment for the person that fucked up, but more so a punishment for everybody else. Because it's possible that you could have used that card, but now it's discarded because the person you're playing with is stupid. Okay, yes, I was that person multiple times. There's also no limit to the amount of cards that a player can hold in their hand at one time. Once a card is drawn, the player has 2 options, either roll the die or play a trump card. If the player decides to roll the die, the player moves the adequate number of spaces. If a player rolls a T on the die, then that player gets to steal a trump card from an opponent's hand. and roll the die again. If the player keeps rolling a T, then they can keep stealing trump cards and rolling again because there's no limit to the amount of times you can roll a T and steal a card. It's kind of like the Robber Baron in Settlers of Catan, except less fun and also fucking stupid. Unlike Monopoly, if you land on a property space, you can't just purchase that property. Instead, you have to slip $10 million into that property's property box, which increases that property's value. You can land on a space that tells you to add 30 to 50 million to any unowned property and take a trump card, which requires you to physically slide the money into the slot on each property box, where it stays until the end of the game. There's a space that says acquire 20 million times a dice roll. There's even a space that if you land on it, you'll be forced to trade one of your owned properties. But how do you actually start acquiring properties? Well, if you land on a space that says force the sale of one unowned property, you can pick any unowned property on the board to buy. But you actually can't just outright buy the property. The selected property is then placed up for auction between all of the players. Each player places a starting bid for the property down on the table, not revealing how much has been bid. Then, the players go around in a circle stating how much their initial bid is. Whoever bids the most money receives the property, unless another player plays an outside investor trump card, which can add value to the player's bidding by increments of 20, 30, 40, 50, or $60 million. Once an outside investor card is played, the bidding opens up again, and all players are now able to bid again using their own money or any private investor cards they may have in their hand. This goes around in a circle until no player is willing to place another bid. Whoever places the highest bid now owns that property and any money within that property box. The money that is used to purchase the property must be slid into the property box, increasing that property's value. Instead of raising a bid during a bidding, a player can choose to take their turn to play a You're Out of the Bidding trump card, which can be used on any opponent. This card essentially just knocks out your opponent so they're unable to purchase the property that you're bidding on. The only way the knocked out opponent can get back into the bidding is to play the I'm back in the bidding trump card from your hand. Once back in, the bidding continues until all other players have decided to pass. This gameplay loops until every property is purchased. Once a player owns a property, the owner can open the property box to check how much money is inside, but does not have to reveal the amount to the other players. Once every property is purchased, part 1 of the game ends and part 2 begins. Okay, but how is anyone actually supposed to make money in this game? Well, as I mentioned before, there is only one space on the board that says acquire $20 million times a dice roll, but that's the only space on the board that can actually give you money. Unlike Monopoly, you get no money when you pass go. Instead, if you land on start, you get to steal one trump card from each opponent, similar to how rolling a T on the die works. You can also play a trump card that says roll the die 5 times for every T you roll. Draw a card from any player. But this game is about cold, hard cash. So when the fuck do I get to start earning? I deserve this, Tony. I deserve to earn. Well, I have bad news for you, because in order to make money in this game, you have to own one of 8 properties, and even then, earning money isn't a guarantee. But of course you have to own property to make money. This is Trump the game. We're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, and unless you have money or property, you're already a loser in Donald Trump's eyes. Anyway, there are 5 main Trump cards that can help you earn money. And I've split these cards into 3 separate categories: property earning, specific property earning, and multiple property specific earning. Property earning cards only have the requirement of owning property. For example, you may pull a card that says if you own at least one property, collect profits of $40 million. And since the card doesn't specify which properties, it can be used with any properties. There are also cards that require you to own 3 or more of any property to play them, such as if you own any 3 properties, collect profits of $160 million. There are also other cards that can be used for taxing other players a certain amount of money. Specific property earning cards require that you own the property depicted on the card. For example, if you own the casino, collect profits of $60 million, Or, if you own Epstein's Island, collect profits of $50 million. There are also dice roll cards that say if you own the airline, collect profits of $20 million times a dice roll. Multiple property-specific earning cards require you to own both specific properties listed on the card. For example, you own both the airline and Epstein's Island. Collect profits of $90 million.
Just make sure not to check those flight logs.
Most of these cards give you more money than any single property card, with the max being $120 million.
But what happens if you have a card in your hand for the sports complex and the casino, but you only own the sports complex and some other asshole already owns the casino? What happens then?
Well, let me introduce you to our final trump card. You can force the sale of any property, meaning that if you want the casino, you can play this card and force your opponent to put their property up for sale. The only catch being that anyone playing the game, including the player being forced to sell, can bid on the property. But of course, this card isn't the only way you can force an opponent to sell a property. There's also a space on the game board you can land on that says the exact same thing.
And round 1, the buying phase ends when all unowned properties on the board have been purchased, or if you run out of unused trump cards. Now we move on to part 2, the dealing phase, which is somehow both simpler and more fucking confusing than part 1. But before we move on to part 2, let's just go over the main rules of part 1 again, just in case anyone's confused.
1. A player picks up a trump card at the start of their turn. 2. Player either plays a trump card or rolls the die. 3. If a T is rolled on the die, the player steals a trump card from an opponent and rolls again. 4. If you land on a property, you add $10 million into that property box. 5. If you land on a buying space, an unowned property of the player's choice goes up for sale. 6. When bidding on a property, you place your bid on the table but don't say the amount. 7. Go in a circle revealing your bids. Whoever has the highest bid wins, unless 8. A player can use an outside investor card to increase their bid and start a new bidding war. 9. All bids must increase the previous bid by $10 million or more. 10. Keep bidding until all players pass on the opportunity. 11. Slide the amount you purchased the property for into the property box and keep the property box. 12. If you don't roll the die, play trump cards to earn money and fuck over your opponents. 13. Part 1 ends when all properties are owned.
Now we enter part 2, the dealing phase, which, like I said, is really easy, but also the dumbest thing a board game I've played has ever done.
Remember the game board? Remember the game pieces? How about the die with the T on it or the trump cards we haven't pulled yet?
Well, guess what? You're not going to be using them for the rest of the game, so you might as well just throw them in the trash because I know you're never going to play this game ever again. Anyway, part 2 is done entirely with the money you have, the trump cards in your hand, and the properties you've purchased. Going in a circle, you can do one of two things. Play a trump card, or try to make a deal. Okay, but what does making a deal mean within the context of Trump the game? Well, I don't fucking know, and neither do the people that made this game, because the rulebook literally tells you that you can do whatever you want. I wish I was joking. The exact quote is,
if you choose not to play a card or have no card to play, you can offer a deal to any other players. Deals may involve the sale, trade, loan, or gift of cards and or property. You can also haggle on the price, but it must be quick. The other player can accept a deal or reject it. As soon as a deal is rejected, your turn is over. You can make practically any type of deal imaginable, and it can be as simple or as complicated as you want. However, if you make a deal, you must try to honor it. You cannot lie to another player or intentionally break a promise. Of course, some situations may be open to interpretation. Players should work together to resolve any differences.
The game developer spent all of their time and effort making part 1 the most complicated bullshit you've ever experienced in your life. So when they got to part 2, they were like, fuck it, do whatever you want. You could trade a trump card for a trump card, you could trade a property for a property, you could trade a trump card for a property, you could trade a property for a trump card, you could use your money to just straight up buy a card or property. Fuck it, if there are no rules, I'm gonna offer up real money, my house, and my firstborn child just so you'll give me that fucking convention center. Part of me really hates this part of the game because it feels cheap and lazy and a waste of the game mechanics that we just spent 45 minutes learning. But part of me thinks it's very fitting for a fraction of Trump the Game to have no rules at all. Once everyone has made all of the deals they want and played all the cards they can, the game ends and you can start counting your assets. Count the money in your hand and also the money in the property boxes that you still own, add them together, and whoever ends up having the most money wins. What an unbelievably anticlimactic way to end one of the most confusing and least fun board game experiences of my life. Now, obviously, I have a personal bias against Donald Trump and everything he stands for. But if the dude made a good board game, I would be telling you exactly that. But there's a reason why people in 1989 didn't want to play it, and it has nothing to do with him as a political figure. Yes, he was a real estate slumlord scumbag, but he wasn't the president. But I guess I can talk about a few things that I actually did enjoy while playing Trump the Game before I absolutely tear into it. I like the idea of the property boxes and not really knowing how much value is hidden inside unless you own it. Although, I think it would be better if no one could know what was inside any of the property boxes. I just think that would make the game more fun. I enjoyed bidding over properties, but it got really old really fast. Also, it was a lot of fun making my roommate upset. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I liked. So what did I hate? Literally everything else. First of all, there are only 18 spaces on the game board, with 8 of them being properties, which means that the options for what you can do in this game are unbelievably small. But they made the instructions so unnecessarily convoluted to try and trick you into thinking the game is more complicated than it really is. Trump the Game gives you the illusion that there are a lot of options for things that you can do, but in reality, it's completely empty. If you compare Trump the Game with the game that it so desperately wants to be, Monopoly, you can see major differences in core gameplay that makes Monopoly a classic and Trump the Game a flop. First, a Monopoly board has 40 spaces and 28 properties, which gives you 70% of the board that you can buy and fight over. Trump the Game has 18 spaces, but only 8 of them are locations that you can buy, which is only about 45%. So already we have a decrease in both the number of properties to be purchased and overall spaces on the board. Part of this is definitely due to the massive size of the property boxes that are required to be on the board until someone purchases it. While I said I enjoyed the property boxes, it ultimately became impractical when 8 property spaces needed to take up over 50% of the game board. We also ran into a problem where we couldn't see what certain spaces on the board said because the property boxes are so tall they would block most or all of the words. Sure, adding physical money to a property box to increase its value is a fun gimmick, but Monopoly allows you to increase the value of your property in a more fluid and fun way with their houses and hotels. Trump the Game is for 3 to 4 players max, because if you try to add any more players, there won't be enough properties for everyone. Monopoly is for 2 to 8 players, which means that you can play with both less people and double the amount of people that you can play Trump the Game with. Sure, there are other board games that I love, like Settlers of Catan, that are only 4 players. But 1, Catan offers players a better, more fulfilling experience, and 2, Catan also offers an extension so you can play with more people. But obviously, playing with friends is not something Donald Trump thought about when making this game, probably because he doesn't have any. The game pieces are fucking garbage, coming in only one design, T for Trump, and only offering them in 4 colors, blue, orange, white, and black, which genuinely has to be the worst collection of colors I've ever seen for board game pieces. There's no red or yellow or purple. There's not even fucking green. Monopoly pieces, for the most part at least, are unique, fun shapes like a dog or a hat or a thimble. Sure, they only come in 1 color, but it's the color of the material that they're made out of. Fucking metal. These Trump pieces are made out of very weak plastic and look as if some Republican engineering student 3D printed them in an hour. Monopoly, and most other board games, give you clear instructions with definitive answers on how to play the game. Trump the Game gives you 10 pages of convoluted rules that you need to follow, and then just gives up and says, do whatever you want. But my biggest point of contention with Trump the Game is that Monopoly throws more obstacles in your path while playing, like going to jail, paying taxes, and having to pay other players increasing amounts of money when you land on their property. In Trump the Game, there are almost no penalties aside from having to pay money or maybe having your property taken away from you. It kind of feels childish how simple and complex it is. To win, you need the most money, and there's really nothing stopping you other than the people around you. All in all, I think Trump the Game is a perfect allegory for Trump the man. Monopoly, in its original form, was an anti-capitalist board game and existed to teach us the evils of capitalism and monopolies, before being stolen by a corporation and becoming the exact thing it was trying to prevent. Whereas Trump the Game was only born out of that capitalistic desire to increase one's wealth and ownership. Donald Trump didn't make this game because he had a massive passion for board games. It was to cash in on every possible opportunity he could. Donald Trump didn't care about this game in the same way that he doesn't care about you. He never has and he never will. He just wants to sell you something. Whether it's hats or shirts or sneakers or a meme coin or a board game, or if it's something that could actually end up killing and displacing millions of people across the country that he claims to love. Trump the Game couldn't exist without Monopoly, just as Monopoly couldn't exist without the Landlord's Game, just as Donald Trump couldn't exist without capitalism.
Because it's not whether you win or lose, it's whether you lose.
Alright, well, that's gonna be it for me today. If you like this video, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you think I should be nominated to be People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive for the year 2025. This week's Funny Boy of the Week is Spencer for sending me this meme. If you want to be Funny Boy of the Week, all you have to do is follow me on Instagram and DM me a meme or a TikTok or anything you think is funny. And if I think it's funny, then you could be Funny Boy of the Week. You can also follow me on all of my other social media, including my Letterboxd and my Twitter. Also, if you want to become a bigger part of this community, you can join my Discord. The links for all of those are in the description down below. I'm Connor McDowell, and I'm gonna sell this board game once Donald Trump dies. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.